Hello, I'm Amanda Smith, and this is my older adult presentation. This is based off the interview with my father and information from my annotated bibliographies. I chose to interview my father, who was born in Bryson City, North Carolina in 1933. He is now 83 years old. He is the oldest of 5 siblings, and he has 5 children, an adopted son, 3 daughters, and a stepson, and I am the youngest of those 5. I lived with my father, both my parents, but my father included, up until age 11, and then I did not live with him after that, nor did I have any type of actual relationship with him, and again, until I was in my mid-20s. My father was 43 years old. 46 years old, sorry, when I was born. So he was already much older. I didn't know a lot about him as far as I did not know a lot about his childhood growing up. As I got older, I heard stories from my older siblings and some of my family when I would go visit them in the mountains. But it was not a topic of conversation my father and I ever really had. This interview was one of the first times he and I have actually sat down and discussed his childhood, which was very interesting, and I feel very blessed to have actually had the opportunity to do that. I chose to use Erikson's 6th stage of the psychosocial development, intimacy versus isolation. This is from around age 19 to 40. This is the stage in which the individual is looking to gain love, when the individual must risk a chance of immersion of self into a sense of we. This is also the time where you create intimate relationships or you suffer the feeling of isolation. It doesn't have to be just romantic relationships, but it can be any meaningful friendships and relationships with family. Erikson said that we have to have a strong sense of self before we can develop successful, intimate relationships, and adults who do not develop a positive self-concept in adolescence can experience feelings of loneliness and emotional isolation. Some important experiences and challenges that my father experienced during this stage of development had to deal with being drafted into the Army but being turned down, moving away from home, getting married, raising kids, beginning a 36-year career. He had to resolve some medical issues that he had. During this time, he also divorced, remarried, and he struggled with mental illness and addiction. At age 19, my father was drafted into the service because of the Korean War. But actually, he was turned away due to his weight. He had suffered an illness since the age of 3, which he was not aware of what it was. But one of the side effects or symptoms of it was the inability to gain or maintain weight. The weight requirement at the time was 105 pounds, and he tried for several months, but he couldn't gain more than 95. His self-esteem and self-concept took a major blow at first, but he worked twice as hard as to find a way to support himself. Due to his isolated geographical location, the inability to join the military, and the lack of employment that was available, he was forced to move away from home to try to find work. At first, he went across the mountain to stay with family, but jobs were just as scarce then. And in an attempt to find a way to support himself, he took on jobs that weren't always exactly legal, which got him into trouble with law enforcement. He sought help from his pastor to try to get out of trouble, and his pastor helped him move down the mountain to Burke County, North Carolina, which is where we're actually located now. But he was forced to have to change his name during this time, and in exchange for the help, he also married a distant cousin. So at age 25, he became a husband and a father. He adopted a son, and within 5 years, they'd had 2 other daughters. During this time, he also began working at Drexel Furniture, which was in 1959. This was a really, really good job for the time. It was steady work. He really enjoyed what he was doing, and he worked there for 36 years. The job allowed him to obtain health insurance, which allowed him to see a specialist to resolve his illness. But because he had been self-medicating, he had already developed an addiction, which he spent 20 years fighting. But yet, despite his addiction, he hadn't missed more than one day of work in over 10 years and actually received an award for that, which he's had framed. He was very, very proud of that. During this period, the major conflict centers on forming intimate, loving relationships with other people. It's the point in time where you ask, will I share my life with someone else or live alone? And this is the main psychosocial crisis that needs to be resolved. Due to my father's early childhood experiences and his inability to form healthy attachments with others and the need to self-medicate, his first marriage ended in divorce after only 12 years. But my father truly did want to find love more than anything, and he sought out help for his mental illness and his addictions. After successfully completing treatment, he was able to find love once again, and he remarried. That was to my mother, and they have been together for the last 38 years. Some of the biological, psychological, and social factors that inhibited the resolution of this social crisis was the fact that my father suffered an illness starting at age 3, and that prevented him from going to school the majority of the time. He never learned to read or write, and he quit after the 5th grade. And he worked as much as possible to support himself. The illness prevented him from being able to join the military, which limited his options further. He also suffered with depression and anxiety because of his illness and some of his earlier life experiences. Not attending school didn't affect his ability to interact with peers his own age, though. He did develop social skills and friendships, a lot of that due to having a large family and a very close-knit community. Everyone knew everyone, and there were less than 500 people in the town that he grew up in. Pain drove him to self-medicate, which led to the developing of addictions through his 20s and 30s. My father was born during the Great Depression in a very isolated mountain town. Most people barely survived from the welfare that they received. My father grew up malnourished and without proper health care. And back in 1933, being born out of wedlock, especially with the very strong religious beliefs within the community, he was often referred to as the bastard. He was raised primarily by his grandmother. She loved him very much, but she had 11 children of her own, 2 of which she had after my father was born. His mother sometimes lived there, but she was prone to loaning him out to other families to work when he was able to. He had to help raise his sister, who was born after him, and the other small children in the home. He didn't live with his mother at all after she married because she had 3 more children whom she had to support, and that didn't include him or his sister. He later became the caretaker to his younger siblings when his stepfather passed away unexpectedly. He was often the victim of verbal, physical, and sexual abuse by the families that he stayed with. The abuse he suffered and the lack of attachment to his mother caused him to have sincere distrust of others, especially women, and this affected all of his personal relationships. Bowlby's attachment theory explains how early experiences of infants with their caregivers set the stage for future relationships. He's very open about the fact that he was very controlling and paranoid at times because of his fear of abandonment. He later formed a relationship with his mother in his late 30s, early 40s, and they were what you would consider to be close. He said that after he repaired the relationship with his mother, his relationships with everyone, personal and friendships, were more positive and long-lasting. Rebuilding and repairing that relationship, I really feel, helped him be able to let go of some of the things that happened and move past it in order to feel safe and secure enough to form relationships. Growing up during the Great Depression and needing to support himself, education was not a priority and it was not enforced with him. But hard work was. Hard work is still very, very important to him. He is 83 years old and still continues to work every day. Working meant that he did not have to go hungry. Bringing in money meant that he wasn't beaten. Working meant he didn't have to be home. And having money meant that he did not have to depend on a welfare check. His lack of education meant his options for the future were limited. He could not read or write. In his 40s, he did learn that he had a form of dyslexia. He learned trade skills. He was versatile in pretty much anything that he could do: make furniture, build houses, fix cars. He can do complex math problems in his head. Needing money led him to work jobs that weren't always legal, which led to legal issues. And not having the money to get himself out wasn't helpful. He grew up under strict religious beliefs, and having children out of wedlock was considered a really huge sin. This thought process is one of the things that led him to marry his first wife, who was pregnant at the time. He didn't want her or her child to have to face the things that he did. He wanted to protect them from that. Some of the biopsychosocial factors, the relationship he had with his family, community, and social forces really contributed to his life experiences. Due to his relationship with his family not being one of a lot of structure, safety, or support, nurturing, security, love, or meeting his basic needs, he never learned to develop healthy attachments with others until his 30s. This inability to connect with others led to his divorce. His divorce led to his mental breakdown, where he was hospitalized in his 30s for eight months. The community he grew up in was not supportive of his needs and actually enabled the abusers. He was forced to work manual labor jobs due to his lack of education. He grew up on welfare. Most people in the area that he is from are still on welfare now. He resented all government assistance due to this, and he was determined to never need assistance, and even refused assistance when he needed it. He was never able to gain a true sense of self until his late 30s, which hindered him in making lasting, meaningful relationships until later in life. And this inner conflict led to increased anxiety, depression, and substance use. Conflict perspective originates from the ideas of Karl Marx. Karl Marx believed that society is as a whole always changing, and that change is driven by class conflict. Conflict perspective is defined as society as a dynamic entity constantly undergoing change as a result of competition over scarce resources. This is what causes inequality and distinction between the elite and the others. Certain individuals or organizations will do what they have to do to maintain their positions of power in society. My father was born in a time where there was a big distinction between the poor and the rich, especially during the Great Depression. Society made it where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Unfortunately, he was born into an extremely poor family. His family survived off welfare and did not have the means or opportunity to make more money to care for the children they had, much less give them children a better life. My father was stuck in a cycle of poverty. His family was stuck into a cycle of poverty. My father did not have the opportunity to get an education due to being ill, lack of appropriate health care, and the fact that he had to work in order to eat. The conflict perspective gives a reason why my father had to jump from adolescence straight into adulthood. Theory limitations. It's the Bandura social learning theory. It's limiting to describe behavior solely in terms of either nature versus nurture, because human behavior is far more complex than that. My father's behaviors were due both to unhealthy family attachments and being extremely poor. The social learning theory does not give a full explanation for all behavior, especially when there was no clear role model to imitate behavior. My father did not have a specific role model growing up, especially not a male that was hardworking and supported his family. My father cannot remember having a role model until his 30s when his plant manager took him under the wing. I think that this theory, Alberta agreed, that that learning theory is a classical and operant condition. However, he added two important things. Mediating processes occur between stimuli and responses, and behaviors learned from the environment through the process of observational learning.